Hey there everyone, and welcome to more RPG Horror Story Cringe with DnD Doge. In today's episode, we have a tale about nepotism ruining an otherwise fantastic D&D group, a story about a dungeon master dealing with a player that just won't stop cheating, and much more. So, without further ado, let's get right into these stories. Great Party, Until the DM's Friend Joins, by Reddit user The Sacred and Propane. This is a venting tale about how a once great campaign went to crap real quick. We played 4 games up until that point, and it was exactly what I was looking for. The difficulty level was very high, but the DM is fair and a good storyteller. All the other players were also quite experienced, and we have a great vibe as a group. We haven't even been in voice chat together for 10 minutes, and we were already chatting like we've known each other for a while. Now, the DM is a young and overly cocky guy, but that only comes through in private conversations with him, never in the game. The Sunday before this one, an in-real-life friend of our DM joined the channel and asked if we were cool with him just observing. Initially, we all agreed. To start off, the guy kept rambling like a child. It got to the point when one player even asked if he was on drugs, because he just keeps rambling. When we tried to start the game, this guy was yelling lyrics of some kind of song he was listening to into his microphone. Jesus, I just got some flashbacks from Xbox Live Call of Duty 4 lobbies. In the first hour of the game, the vibe of the party was done. I think this guy even realized that he was a buzzkill because he finally muted himself during that time, and I guess it became too boring for him because he left after that first hour. Once he was gone, the party was getting back into its old flow, and the players visibly got more comfortable. Even the DM noticed, and I answered that his friend's energy was kind of overwhelming, and it killed our vibe, to what she said, "Oh, I get that." Now, fast forward to last Saturday. A message on Discord pops up, and it's our DM asking everyone if we would be cool with his friend joining the game. This was followed by dead silence. Usually, our server is super active, and most of the people answer within a few minutes during the daytime. I saw this question an hour after it was posted, and while I was thinking about what to answer, I also saw in our Dice channel that they've already rolled this guy's stats before anybody answered. I checked Roll20, and surprise, the character is already created, so the question was obligatory. When the previous last person joined, he was asked to pick a different class so that we don't double up on one class, but when his friend picked a class that we already have, the DM apparently did not give an F. Now, most of the other people in our party have major anxiety issues and suck at confrontation, and I am the new guy who is way less experienced in the game than the others, so I figured I'd at least wait for the first session with this dude before I stretched the boundaries of my relationship with the DM too far. It pretty much turned out as bad as one would expect. The guy suffers from major main character syndrome, and in between, hypes up the DM's worst habits, like acting like a dickhead. Usually, before we switch a scene, or progress in some kind of stage of the game, we try to make sure that every player could pitch some ideas on what to do, while in general being really careful. Now, this friend dude just rushes through crap. Once he sees a place to go, a guy to talk to, or a thing to do, he yeets towards that like a moth to a flame, and the DM then progresses the game and party around him. As of now, this party is only following this dude's whims, and none of us even like him. So, this guy is getting the special treatment, and the game got progressively worse for all. I already talked to the DM about how his friend's behavior has eroded the game, but his answers basically were, "Yes, I know, I'll take care of it," which would be a surprise to me. So, should I abandon ship? Or wait for this guy to get bored with the game, which I think would be quite possible. Or should I double down on the critique after the following session? I am the newest guy in the party, as most of the others have played in campaigns together before, and I get the feeling if I overstep, I could easily be replaced by this guy. Man, that sucks. To find a game with great people that you really vibe with, only for the DM to bring in an obnoxious friend, and basically without asking anyone. Granted, he did ask, but he already knew the outcome before anyone said anything. As far as staying quiet or confronting the DM again, I would say put out some feelers to the other players, and confirm that they feel the same way you do, which, by the sounds of it, is very likely. Then, as a group, go to the DM with your concerns and see what happens. If not that, like OP said, maybe just wait another session or two, as the DM's friend does sound like the type of person to quickly move on to the next shiny thing. But I would recommend the first method. Worst case scenario, the DM doesn't want to listen and keeps him in the game, in which case, perhaps you and the other players can start your own game with each other, as it sounds like everyone vibes really well. Though, what would you guys suggest here? I'm legit curious. Let's move on. My own friend is a constant cheater, and it makes me not want to DM anymore for the entire group. By Reddit user, Odandy. Basically, I have one player in my group who I will give the nickname of Todd, which has no affiliation to the actual person's identity. He is an in real life and extremely good friend of mine, but also is extremely selfish and chooses to cheat and lie about rules only when it benefits him. Todd has been in semi-unserious D&D groups for a couple of years. He has one continuous monthly session with a DM who, from his own words, basically doesn't know a lot about the rules and just kinda ad-libs as he goes. The DM that Todd is used to playing with never looks up rules and just assumes that every single thing his players are telling him is correct without second-guessing it. I, on the other hand, am a DM who is the polar opposite of that. While I typically like to play by the rule of cool, D&D itself is, at the end of the day, a game that has rules in place and balance that make it, well, a game. Compared to a headcanon roleplay where everyone is an anime character with unlimited powers and capabilities, I like to ensure that my players are challenged, and I can only do that if they are playing by the rules, as I don't make my own creatures break the rules of the game either. So Todd is used to a very laissez-faire way of playing D&D, where rules basically don't matter. I have told Todd multiple times that I do care about the rules and that we're going to play by them. Though Todd has added multiple items to his sheets, which almost always is an advanced armor that he should not have at character creation. I have told Todd 3 separate times in 3 separate instances to not do this, and to only give himself armor that he starts with, because that is exactly what everyone else is doing. I finally had to have a real talk with Todd, and told him that this behavior straight up breaks my trust. I asked him exactly why he's doing this, and his excuse was literally because X armor didn't have a certain disadvantage, and he wanted to not have disadvantage. I asked him why he didn't just ask, and why he's doing stuff on the side without telling me. And he didn't really have an answer to that. All he did was apologize instead of owning up to his behavior. It's so frustrating. I feel like I shouldn't have to tell an adult not to cheat at a game. I feel like it's the basic expectation that the only equipment that you get at character creation is starting equipment as laid out by the player's handbook, and nothing else, unless your DM says otherwise. It's so frustrating that he is consistently trying to cheat and thinks that I won't notice when I'm obsessive about checking my player's sheets because of him specifically. All in all, it makes me want to stop DMing for my own friend group, because I don't want to, nor could I kick him out. I have plenty of other in real life and online games that I can host instead. I don't know what else to say to him at this point. Any suggestions? Well, that certainly sounds like a major headache. OP has already done the first things that should be done in this situation. He talked to Todd privately about the cheating, and politely asked him to stop, not once, but what sounds like 3 times. Honestly, the only option at this point would be to kick him out or just drop the game. Though there is always option C. Just keep playing, and then the next time you notice him cheating, call him out on it in the open in front of everyone else. Make it known that the only way everyone gets to keep playing the game that you're running as if Todd stops cheating. Move the pressure from you to him. Besides, they say that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and hopefully the peer pressure of him knowing that the rest of his friend group would blame him for the game ending would be the catalyst for him to finally stop with the BS. It's not the most tactful way to get the results, but I would give it a high probability of working. Besides, like I said, you already explored all other possible avenues here. Though, what would you guys suggest? Let's move on. Game turns out to be a messy ride because everyone wants different things from it. By Reddit user Intelligent Brunch 972. I joined an internet game advertised as story-driven and RPG-focused, and it turned out to be a ride, because it so happened that pretty much everyone wanted different things from the game. The relevant players are Murder, Ancestral Guardian Barbarian, named after his tendencies to always choose violence as a solution to any problem, and apparent desire to play as a selfish and evil character as much as the setting would permit. Min-Max, a 4-class multiclass, but mostly Gloomstalker Ranger, named after what he did the most. Boobs, College of Swords Bard, named Boobs because every description she gave of her character's actions involved a mention of how extraordinarily large the character's breasts were. She was also a horny bard. Then there's also me, a paladin. The story begins with our party being hired to find a magic gem that a local wizard had stolen. We track it to a nearby village where soldiers ambush us. We were not outlaws, so we found this weird, except for Min-Max, who says that it's pretty normal for a fall medieval world. Still, the DM says that there's something strange about these soldiers. Boobs wants to seduce the soldiers, and thus render them non-hostile. The DM declines to let her roll, and says that they appear to be under magical influence, but Boobs complains that DM is restricting her player agency. Combat concludes, and Min-Max requests that encounters should be harder in the future, and the DM promises to scale up the difficulty. We speak to villagers who say that people have been disappearing from the region, especially the children, and he suspects that the wizard of a nearby castle has something to do with it. Then Murder proceeds to loot the abandoned houses. On we go, and the DM describes how a horde of children is running towards us with weapons drawn, and they too appear to be mind-controlled. My paladin demands that we find a non-lethal solution, but Barbarian refuses to listen and charges at them. Boobs asks again if she can solve the encounter by seducing the opposition, and everyone falls silent. The DM says something like, "I said that they're kids," and Boobs apologizes and says that she missed that part, then doesn't say anything else for the rest of the session. Then Murder starts to kill the kids, and I leave the area. Murder and Boobs die, and Min-Max uses some kind of cheese tactic to make himself untargetable and kills all the kids with his arrows. He then goes on and proceeds to solo the wizard boss, who was mind-controlling them, and gets the stone back. Out of character, Murder is blaming me for abandoning the party, and the DM offers that he can make another character, but he says that he just quits the campaign. And Boobs makes a new character that's identical to the one that died. Holy hell, that game sounded like a chaotic cluster of insanity. Between one character just killing everything in sight, and another trying to seduce kids, I could see this party leaving this town as more of the bad guys than the wizard was. If you aren't enjoying the game as it is now, I would just nope out of there and find another table. Though, and hear me out here, you could stay just out of curiosity to see how much more batshit things can get. I know I would, for maybe like a few more sessions. But before we move on to the next one, I think it's time for a quick kitty break. Ah, there we go. Now, let's move on to the following story. How I Almost Got Stabbed by a Player, by Reddit user The Warlock 2099. So I had been DMing for a while, and I had gotten into Vampire the Masquerade 2nd edition. So I decided to run a game, and my friend brought this girl from his college. Let's call her Raven. Anyway, Raven is very enthusiastic about the game, and created a toreador who owns a nightclub. At the end of a session, she says that she wants to come back dressed up with props, and says that we all should do this. LARP was not really big back then, so it seemed interesting, and we all dressed up like our characters. The next day, she comes back dressed up as her character with a katana sword, and begins to act like her character even when we take a break to eat something or take a breather. So, after eating some pizza, we start the game, and in the game, she has the players meet up at her club to decide their next move against the prince. As they leave, I tell her that the bouncers call her and ask her if it's okay if some firemen come in to check the club for fire safety violations, and she says fine. As they leave, I blow up the club as a warning from the prince of the city to not F with her. Wait, her? Wouldn't that be a princess then? Probably a typo. This is when Raven freaks out. She jumps up, screams, and throws the books off the table. We are all shocked and thinking, what the hell just happened? Then, that's when she looks at me, grabs the katana, and screams, "You mother bleep, you blew up my club!" And then tries to take a swing at me with the freaking sword. People try to grab her, which is when I bolt because this chick is fast. She starts to chase me around the house when someone else finally grabs her. She kept screaming, "My club! You blew up my club!" But then she eventually calms down and tried to play it like it was all a joke. So yeah, that's when I stopped being a DM, and that was in 1998. I did just start a game 2 weeks ago, but there will never be any kind of LARPing in my life. Well, I would say that is a bit of an overreaction. Perhaps they shouldn't have let her bring in a katana. But to be honest, who would expect a player to do something like that? Well, I mean, thinking about it, Vampire the Masquerade, likely a 1998 goth girl. Blade had just come out. Yeah, no, I'm wrong, that tracks. Though it is a good thing that the others at the table were able to stop her. But it is a shame that prevented OP from DMing for years after that. Though, by the sounds of it, they are starting up again, so that's good. I would just make it a house rule that all edged weapons be checked at the door. Let's move on. And, as it's Friday, let's cap off this week of cringe with a glory story. A little cool example of the rule of cool, by Reddit user Mayervok. My players were fighting a priest who summoned a spiritual weapon, a sword. One of the players plays a halfling barbarian with the Path of the Ancestral Guardian named Killowy. She starts her turn next to the spiritual weapon and says, "I swing my axe at the sword." Another player says, "No, don't do it. You can't damage it." But the barbarian player says, "Yeah, but Killowy can't know that. I attack the sword." She rolled a 19, so I described how her axe passes right through the sword without any impact. Now, she contemplated her next move for a bit, and suddenly her eyes went wide. "But I technically hit it, right?" I said yes to that, and she says, "Then I use my Ancestral Protector's ability." Starting when you choose this path at 3rd level, spectral warriors appear when you enter your rage. While you're raging, the first creature you hit with an attack on your turn becomes the target of the warriors, which hinder its attacks. Until the start of your next turn, that target has disadvantage on any attack roll that isn't against you. And when the target hits a creature other than you with an attack, that creature has resistance to the damage dealt by the attack. I gave myself a moment to think that through, and then I say, the Ancestral Protectors are actually spirits, so your halfling ancestors grab the hilt of the sword. Now, once the sword attacks the party's warlock, I describe how the ancestors struggle with the sword, and they chaotically wave it around. Then, the grand-grandmother of Killowy reproaches the sword for bad behavior. This was a little moment that involved a lot of laughter, and I wanted to share it here just to provide another example of how cool the rule of cool can be. As a DM, I was very happy about the whole sequence, because it did several things at once. 1. It rewarded the player for not metagaming and staying true to her character. 2. It rewarded the player for being creative. 3. It allowed for a cool and logical moment, even though it was not raw. In my opinion, it seems only appropriate that spirits would be able to grab a spiritual weapon. And 4. It created a narratively funny moment. Feel free to share your cool moments as well. Well, I can't really argue with that logic. It would make sense for people in the spirit realm to be able to interact with a weapon that was as well. So kudos to the DM here for taking something that a player was doing just to stay in character and allowing that to happen. Sure, D&D has rules, but like OP presented, sometimes you just have to bend those rules to allow something cool to happen. And I also have to agree with OP in the respect that I would love to hear some of your rule of cool moments. And if you would like them to be read here, be sure to post them to the DnD Doge subreddit under the tag Glory Story. And who knows, it may just end up in a video. But that is all the time we have for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may you and your games have many rule of cool moments. Until next time.